year, the first week of May is recognized as National Anxiety and Depression Awareness Week. May is also Mental Health Awareness Month, and I have some important topics planned to share with you. But today, let's talk about anxiety. Have you ever felt like you couldn't express the thoughts you had in your head? Have you ever felt so anxious that it affected you physically? Well, I've experienced this in a very tangible way, especially after my accident that I had at age 16. In my journey, I've experienced anxiety on many levels. I do not have an anxiety disorder, which I know is something many people struggle with. And I'll talk about that a little later in this video. But I have had situational anxiety, and it was the worst while I was in the intensive care unit after my accident. That's because I wasn't able to talk or communicate while I was on a ventilator. I was so fearful about what my life was going to look like because they had told me that I was going to be a quadriplegic and use a wheelchair for the rest of my life. I wasn't able to explain how I was feeling, so I just had to hold it all inside. I was trapped in my own thoughts, and I was experiencing intense physical and mental pain. The medications that I had to be on also caused intense hallucinations, which I shared about in another video, and I'll link below. The anxious thoughts that raced through my head over and over again were all about my future. I was so fearful about what my life was going to look like. I was thinking, my life is over. I will be such a burden on my family. Will I ever be able to get married and have children? What is the future going to look like, and how will I ever have a good life in a wheelchair? My anxiety and fear built up to such an extent that when an occupational therapist visited me twice a day, every day, pretty much the only thing that she did was massage my shoulder muscles because I had golf ball sized knots all throughout them. And after about 2 weeks, the ventilator was moved from my mouth to my neck through a trach. And while I still couldn't talk, at least I now could mouth things to my family and healthcare workers, even though no sound came out. One day, I mustered up the courage to ask one of my nurses about one of my deepest fears. Her name was Marnie, and I'll never forget her and her kindness. And I asked Marnie if I would ever be able to get married and have kids. I was so afraid and anxious to know the answer, but Marnie sat by my bed and told me all the people that she personally knew who had injuries like mine, who went on to get married, have families, and lead happy and fulfilling lives. I cannot even explain what she did for me. It took this 1,000-pound boulder that was sitting on my shoulders and lessened it so much by her helping me know that I could still have a good life. After about 3.5 weeks, I got off the ventilator and was finally able to talk. Mouthing things was helpful, but once I was able to actually talk about my anxieties and my fears, I started to feel better. I shared about all my anxieties and the hallucinations I was experiencing. Just putting them out into the open helped immensely and also helped me clarify with my family all the things that I have been struggling with. So many people are struggling with anxiety disorders as well as situational anxiety. If there's one thing I want you to take away from today's video, it's that it really, really helps to talk to people. Share your fears with a trusted friend or family member or counselor. Personally, I think a counselor is one of the best options because they're a neutral third party who are outside of the situation and can really listen to what's going on in your life and give you an objective perspective. Another thing I want you to remember is that most of our anxious thoughts and feelings come from things we cannot control. I have to remind myself of this daily. When I'm feeling overwhelmed with my to-do list, or about my caregiver's schedules, or about an upcoming speaking engagement, I remember a verse from the Bible that says, "Don't be anxious, pray about everything." Another thing that I like to remember is an activity called Circle of Control, and I learned this from Selena Freimark. I'll put her credentials at the bottom here. Take a piece of paper and draw a big circle on it. On the inside of the circle, you write down all the things that you're worried about that you can control. And on the outside of the circle, you write down all the things that are on your mind and that you're anxious about that you can't control. In this activity, we find that most of what's giving us anxiety is not within our control. I encourage you to use this activity because it really shows how a majority of the time we're anxious about things that we really can't do anything about. And if we're anxious about things that we can control, then we can create a plan to move forward with them. It's really twofold, acknowledging and creating a plan of action. Yes, my to-do list can be overwhelming, but when I look back, I can see that I'm really good at getting a lot of things done in a day. I just have to be realistic with what I actually can do. Some days, if I set up a to-do list with 30 items, then my anxiety is going to take over. I'm setting myself up for failure. So instead, I give myself reasonable expectations around what I can actually accomplish day to day. That same thing applies with my caregiver schedules and my speaking engagements. Things have always worked out the way that they were supposed to. There's no reason for me to lose my peace and joy worrying about them for hours on end. So I've also come to realize that I'm harder on myself than anyone else is. Do you ever feel that way? Like you're holding yourself to a very high standard? I recently watched a video about self-compassion. I talked about how we need to give ourselves more grace. If we don't have unreasonably high expectations for other people, why should we put them on ourselves? Brene Brown has this wonderful wisdom. She says, no matter what gets done and how much is left undone, I am enough. This is an excellent mantra, and I encourage you to write it down if you struggle with anxiety. Know that you have value and worth outside of your actions and accomplishments, no matter what the world sees. So many people struggle with mental health concerns at all different stages of life. Young people can have anxiety. Retired people can have anxiety. Parents can have anxiety. Teachers can have anxiety. These things are more common than you might think. But the first step is being open and talking about it with someone you trust. You are not alone. I know what it feels like to feel alone and be unable to talk about the thoughts going through my head. And if you're not struggling, I probably guarantee that someone in your life is. And I encourage you to be that trusted person that they can open up to. I'll leave you with this final thought. If you or someone you know is struggling with depression, anxiety, or some other mental illness, I want you to know that there is no shame in seeing a counselor or taking medication. Just like we take care of our physical health by seeing doctors and getting treatment, the same applies to our mental health. I take medication for my disability every day, and I don't ever feel guilty about it. And if you started taking medication and it's not working for you, go back to your doctor. There are other options and doses you can try. Having open communication with your doctor is really, really important. Thank you for listening to my journey about anxiety today. If you're struggling with anxiety, I hope this helps you see that there are tangible ways to cope and to work through your anxiety and to be mentally and emotionally healthy. Please let me know if this resonated with you and if you have any other tips or suggestions for those struggling with anxiety. See you next time.